This is Lock and Load. I like to work with colleagues simply because they have media sense and they understand how to get to the point, be real concise and real fast and real direct and get their opinion across. And being in gun media is sort of a rarefied air because there's lots and lots of podcasts. I don't know how many radio hosts are out there. There's too few of us out there. But one of the big dogs, probably the biggest dog in terms of how many people listen to him on the weekend, is the host of Armed American Radio. And this particular gentleman's name is Mark Walters. How do, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yes,
Mondays, days after the Big Monster Show are usually days I don't really talk to people, but I'll talk to you all day long, brother, because I love you to death.
I appreciate that.
Great being with you, honestly.
Well, hey, Mark was the one I've been trying to get on Radio Row for years at SHOT Show. And in 2020, as I'm packing up to go to the airport, I get a call. Hey, man, what are you bringing with you? And I was like, well, I was bringing my radio stuff, but I figured I was going to set up in the press room. I got you a spot on Radio Row. So that was my inaugural a la Mark Walters. So
well, I'll tell you what, let's do Radio Row at CPAC together next year. Okay.
Same guy in charge of that?
Yeah.
We'll have to lobby him. You know that, right?
No, I've already got it taken care of.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We're all set. It was not accidental, but I kind of stumbled into it. But that's fodder for next year's conversation.
Fodder for next year. Anyway,
there we go.
Let's talk about talk radio. I mean, when I got out of the military in 1990, I was hearing all these guys that I went straight into the route business. So I was in a vehicle listening to the radio in between each stop as I was delivering beer. And I heard this guy, and I was almost certain everybody was mispronouncing his first name. They were calling him Rush. I was sure it had to be Russ. Right. And but I listened to him, and I had never, all of my time in the military, I was 30 when I got out of the military, and all this time, I'd never really thought about what I was. I knew how I voted. I knew how I thought. And then Mr. Limbaugh helped me put a label, if I needed one, to the way I think. What, as far as with you with talk radio, did he do anything as far as any sort of inspirational stuff for you?
Oh yeah. He summed it up. He made 2 and 2 equal 4. If that makes sense. I was the same way you were. I listening to Rush. I remember I was not too long out of college, and I was working for a trucking company in the Carolinas. And one of the VPs, I'm going back in my head now, going back to memories. The guy's name was Rusty McNabb. I'll never forget it. And he was riding along with me for the day. And he says, turn on that Rush Limbaugh. Let's listen to that Rush Limbaugh. Have you listened to this guy yet? And I said, yeah, actually I did, because I spent a lot of windshield time as a sales rep for the trucking company. So I had found him on an AM station, and I was addicted to him. He was saying the things I was thinking and saying to other people in personal, private conversations, but he was articulating it in a way that I think just made 2 and 2 equal 4. So from that standpoint, he validated me. If that makes sense. He validated what I was thinking. I thought, hey, I'm not by myself here. Now I'm conservative. My father's conservative. My family, I grew up that way. Most of my friends. But you didn't have at that time, I think you'll agree with me, there are political differences, but not like today. There was no social media. There was no flat out hatred. We still talk to our neighbors if they were left wing, right?
Yeah, we could have conversations with each other.
Conversations with each other. And because we watched the news at that time at 6:30 at night, and then comes CNN, and you had Rush Limbaugh out there who was validating what we were saying as all of this technology was coming into place. And what I think about Rush, as talk radio host, like you are, and like I am, have been for the last 13 some plus years, making a living doing it. Here we have computers in front of us. When Rush Limbaugh got started in Sacramento back in the day, Rush Limbaugh did not have an internet. Rush Limbaugh did not have a computer. The computer he had was 4 feet deep, right? It was a DOS program.
Analog world, yeah.
Completely analog world. And if you remember going back and looking at some of the old photographs of him in the studio, Rush had stacks of newspapers in front of him. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Sacramento Bee, he had newspaper, and he was flipping through those papers. And the amount of time it took him to research what was a 3-hour show back then. If you can imagine turning off your system. Now, you and I can be talking on the radio as we've done together as guest and host and flip that position many times. And I've been able, without you even knowing it, to be able to go, if you say something I'm not familiar with, before you finish your sentence, I've got it up in front of me.
Right.
Now, that is a tremendous advantage for people like you and I, that he didn't have. And what that does, and this was the greatness of Rush. Rush didn't need it. It was all right here. He was able to articulate those positions without any assistance. I try to do the best I can. To me, there are 3 types of talk radio, as you know. There's guest-driven talk radio, there's host-driven talk radio, and there's caller-driven, okay? My personal opinion, and I mean no disrespect to anybody, I think caller-driven radio that is predominantly caller-driven, I think is lazy. I think that's a host that just doesn't want to work, wants to take phone calls and let the guests, let the callers drive the direction of the show. To me, I think I don't mind, like what Rush doing on a Friday, I guess?
Right.
He had but he had callers coming in during the day, but it wasn't his whole show. It was a part of his program. Rush did predominantly host-driven radio, and that's tough to do, man, for 3 hours, as you know. I have guests on mine. I like guest-driven radio because I want people to hear what's going on outside the industry. So they get a combination of me and them. And Rush, on the other hand, did a combination of both. But he was able to spit it out there out of his head. And it's why I think I don't listen to talk radio. I haven't listened to talk radio personally in years because I don't want to pick something up and have somebody say, oh, you know what? He got that from Bill Frady. He must have been listening to Lock and Load because I heard Bill Frady say that the other day. So that's why I haven't listened to Rush Limbaugh. I haven't listened to Hannity. I haven't listened to any of them in years because I don't want anyone to ever be able to say that they thought I got it from somebody else.
Well, a lot of those guys, and this is a thing I've been seeing. I mourn the passage of Rush Limbaugh.
Oh my gosh!
I think he was in the middle of changing. I think Trump's ideas. I think he was getting ready to leave conservatism and maybe become a right-wing populist like Trump is, and really, which is what's driving all these 75 million people that voted for him and is going to change the Republican Party for the better. I would have loved to have seen that evolve into its final product, but since it didn't, I'm seeing all these guys out here writing now about it's almost like a requiem for talk radio, and talk radio of the type that you and I do. If filling in on just a purely conservative talk radio show that's called caller driven, like you talk about, is a step down for us because we deal in a very detailed world.
Yeah,
and
it's very nuanced.
Yes, the nuances that we bring to it and the understanding that we bring to it is, I mean, even Limbaugh, as good as he was, Limbaugh didn't understand guns. He didn't understand. He was for the Second Amendment, but he couldn't articulate to you why. I never heard him do it. Did you?
Honestly, I'm going to be honest. And like I said, I hadn't listened to Rush in years. I think as I knew he got sick, when I knew he made his announcement, I flipped over to him a couple times, just for 2, 3, 4 minutes to listen to him. But I have not. I've heard him talk about Second Amendment before in the past. Obviously, he was pro-gun. It's a conservative position. But you're right. I haven't personally heard him articulate it because I hadn't listened to the show in so many years. When I probably did hear him articulate it many years ago, I wasn't thinking about it in the terms I'm thinking about it now. So it would be, excuse me, it's too far along, too far back for me to even remember that. I will say this though, you're talking about Rush evolving and a requiem for talk radio. I believe our genre of talk radio, and let's give credit where it's due. I mean, my friend Tom Gresham started Gun Talk 26 years ago. Okay, he's had a remarkable run. And he's evolved over the years. His program has evolved over the years as technology has evolved, as social media has evolved. It's forced anybody who does this to evolve. And I think Rush was evolving. Were his viewpoints evolving? I don't know. I mean, do your viewpoints evolve? Again, it's nuance. We're talking about our right to bear arms. My viewpoints on the right to bear arms have never evolved. I have a right to keep and bear arms, and you're not going to take it from me. It's an absolutist position.
Right.
Now
Right.
we
Absolutely.
may argue certain things. I think you and I are going to talk about Lauren Boebert, and that will be a great example, but that's not a change in my position or your position. It's just a matter of how is the topic being articulated by others outside talk radio. That'll make sense when you and I get to talking about it here in a few minutes.
Yep.
But I don't know if he was evolving or not. I will say this: conservatism. I don't think if the Republican Party does not represent conservatism to me, it just happens to be the tent that it's housed under at the moment. And I think Donald Trump is proof of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I didn't go to CPAC. I don't watch TV. So I've read that he killed it at CPAC.
Yeah. I saw the speech. It was good. I watched the speech.
What I've been looking at is some of the players that are out there commenting on what he said, where an article in the Daily Caller, which is supposed to be this conservative website, said Donald Trump repeated the false story that the election was stolen. Guess where I'm not going now to look for resources now for talking points anymore. So.
That's come up on my program. It came up on my show last night. Justin from Car Arms brings it up on a regular basis in the Armed American Radio Classic Roundtable every Sunday.
Right.
Trump will bring it up forever. In fact, he had a great line. He says, hey, you never know. Maybe I'm going to go kick their ass 3 times. And okay, meaning he beat them twice.
Yep.
All right. When there are some things that just don't make sense, and I'm not going to sit here and beat up the election. Look, it is what it is. One of the things that makes us who we are when we talk about gun rights is, and guns, let's put it in this frame. You can't take your own personal defense seriously.
Right.
If you refuse to accept that evil exists.
Right.
If you don't think there are bad people out there.
Hang on for me and tell everybody how to find Armed American Radio before we go to break here.
ArmedAmericanRadio.org. The brand new website is up. You'll find everything there. You can watch the show, listen to the show, read the latest news, everything. ArmedAmericanRadio.org.
5 days a week, and the Monster Show is on the weekends. We'll be right back with Mark Walters. This is Lock and Load.